Over the Line Extra, your weekly Galway GAA podcast with Ollie Turner and Shane Walsh.
On in, it's Over the Line Extra on a Thursday, and as ever we're looking forward to another busy championship weekend. Last time round it was all about the Galway hurlers. They got the job done just about against Cork. Yeah. We'll be chatting to Shane Walsh about that a little bit later on. But this weekend it's back to the big ball, and after what seems like an age since the Connacht final win over Roscommon, the Galway footballers are back in action. Albeit, Sean, they did have to wait for a little while to find out their opponents, and we've been salivating over the prospect of Galway and Armagh doing battle since that draw took place last Monday week. What's your feeling? I mean, you're out and about on the roads of Galway. What are people saying?
Yeah, there's a confidence. There's a confidence, definitely. The first thing I think, and isn't it fantastic that there's going to be a huge crowd at the game. I mean, the four games really do seem to have whet the appetite, particularly the Mayo connection to Kerry and Galway and Armagh, obviously in the same day. There's a bit of confidence, but I think also now people are beginning to look at Armagh seriously. I think if you ask anyone, and we'll chat in a second about it, I think Tyrone, probably Donegal were probably the favourite teams to emerge from Ulster. We've had a total change in that. But look at Galway, we're in a fantastic place. And the other thing that people keep saying is we're on the right side of the draw. You're avoiding the big two, as it seems, maybe even the big three, if you include Mayo and that, Dublin and Kerry. So look, at fantastic opportunity, and I think there's a real excitement ahead of the game.
No doubt about it. So what better man to bring in to chat about the prospects of Galway and Armagh getting to an All-Ireland final, or at the very least a semi-final, than former Armagh legend Aaron Kernan, who joins us. So Aaron, excitement in Galway. People are genuinely thinking, well, here's an opportunity to try and get over Armagh and potentially Derry to get to an All-Ireland final. The trouble is, I'm sure Armagh are saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I have to say, I know from where we were after the defeat to Donegal up in Ballybofey, the uncertainty that led into the Tyrone game in terms of really what style of football we were going to play, to now the two performances that we've delivered. And just like Sean mentioned, I suppose now with a supporters hat on, I'm just finding it very hard not to look at the path ahead and not just focus on this weekend's game. So I think that's for both Galway and Armagh. I think that's what makes this an absolutely massive opportunity. I don't think we could have asked for it any better. And in terms of me, I suppose if I'm just speaking from a purely spectacle point of view, I'm delighted that we have got Galway, because I think it'll be a cracking game of football. I think both teams will go out to play the right way, and I think that whoever's good enough to come through it, they will have massive momentum heading into a game, an All-Ireland semi-final, more than likely against Derry, which would be a different spectacle in terms of how they're going to set up. But I think the momentum from this win is going to be massive from whoever's going to come out of it.
So, I mean, you know everything you need to know about Derry and the potential which is ahead of you if you get through Sunday. But I don't think it's fair to say that there's much of a relationship between Galway and Armagh in recent times that you can draw any sort of form line. Only ever played 3 times in a championship. Last time was in 2015 up in the athletic grounds. So is there a sense that this is an absolute proper 50-50 game?
I genuinely feel it is, and I'm not saying that just to be cute or whatever. Honestly, I feel that if Armagh can produce a similar level of performance and absolutely nothing less than what they have done against Tyrone and Donegal, then I genuinely feel we have the ability to go and win this weekend. But it's going to take that. And I suppose just a wee one is from supporters up here. I'm not sure that they are, I suppose, really focusing in enough on the quality that Galway have. We might be getting a wee bit carried away in terms of looking further ahead. But I don't think that's going to be the case with our team. There's huge matchups that have to be got right, particularly from our perspective. And I suppose what Galway are going to do to us this weekend is they're going to pose more of an attacking threat than what we have faced in the 2 games previous. Really, I was at the game, only Darren McCurry against Tyrone literally looked like the only forward who was going to score. Donegal then, they played Michael Murphy and McBrearty inside, which they were target men, but it was their running game. Because we had to mark them close to goal, It left a lot of space around a half-back line, which caused us serious trouble up until half-time. But Galway is going to be literally, we probably need at least 4 man markers this weekend. And like I said, it's going to put individuals in defence under more pressure than what they have been previously. And in doing that, whenever we had only 1 or 2 man markers, you were able then as a defender, I know myself, you can drop off and see danger elsewhere. This weekend, there's definitely going to be at least 4 key battles that we're going to need to at least break even on. But on the flip coin, I think we have forwards as well that will cause you problems, different headaches. We can play a very direct style of football as well as been composed and comfortable on the ball. So for me, that's why I think if both teams can fulfill their potential, I think this is without doubt the potential to be the best game of the weekend, because well, you might think Kerry and Mayo, I think that could end up being a bit more cagey. I think both these teams, there's only one way we're going to get to a semi-final, and that's going to perform properly. And I think that's what's really intriguing about the whole thing.
Like, we're interested as well, Sean, in the matchups, and Aaron has rightly identified. Look at the 2 marquee names, if you want to pin it on both sides, will be, who's going to mark Shane Walsh and Rian O'Neill. So let's get to those questions first, Aaron, because from an Armagh perspective, I'm sure you're going to be looking at probably even more than one player at a given moment to try and deal with Shane Walsh, who I think everybody would agree, if he gets the space in Croke Park, he will run riot.
He will. I would expect a clubmate of mine, James Morgan, to be given the task of marking him. I think Aidan Forker will get the job of Damien Comer, because obviously he's just that bit bigger and more robust. But I think you're right in terms of, you give Shane open space in Croke Park, and as good a player and as fast and tough as James Morgan is, he's just too good. So that's where one Armagh defender needs to always be able to make sure, I've done my job, my man's out of the game, but I'm now able to go and help out and double team on Shane Walsh, or be the next man in. If James can slow him up a bit, the next man in, that he can't throw you the shimmy, or because he has the ability to break off either foot, it just makes him so hard to track and to keep quiet. But likewise, I'd be of the opinion that Sean Kelly will get the job in terms of going on Rian. But similarly to Shane Walsh, and again, someone who I know personally, Rian O'Neill will be very, very much looking forward to getting an opportunity to perform in a packed Croke Park. He comes from good bloodlines from both sides of his house, and heading into this weekend, even though it's such a huge game for him, and really it's his first big day. I know he played a league game this year in Croke Park. It's his first big day out, but I don't see him being fazed at all by the occasion this weekend.
Of course, you mentioned Damien Comer and the likelihood of him being on the square. The other big name player from a Galway perspective will obviously be Paul Conroy and his impact. Have you been impressed, like most pundits have talked about him as potentially one of the footballers of the year, depending on if Galway get to the final, where you might go with that award? How good is Conroy in your opinion?
Absolutely exceptional. I'd have him up there at the moment. Himself and Brian Fenton, as far as I'd be concerned, would be the 2 top midfielders in the country. And it's everything about him, really. He's come back unbelievably well from the horror of the Super 8s, the 2 leg breaks against Kerry a couple of years ago. Hasn't hampered him at all. And what I love about him is his mixing up of the game. That's what makes him so hard. Like, it's easy to say, right, he needs to be man marked, but he can retain possession. He can do the simple things well around the middle of the field. But he has an unbelievable passing game, which takes out your half-forward line and delivers quality ball inside. And then he also has the ability to let the game flow around him, but read it in terms of he's going to come off your full forward or come off a half-forward and then kick a point. And that's so hard to mark that. Particularly midfielders don't like to mark each other. They like to play their own game. So it's not knowing what he's going to do. He's probably a different type of player in terms of mixing it up to what Shane Walsh is, but he can hurt you so many ways. If you stand off him and try and cut the passes that he's going to put inside, he'll kick points. And if you push out on him and you're trying to pressurize him, he'll let the ball go inside and time is run off the shoulder and his point scoring has been absolutely exceptional this year, even way ahead of what Brian Fenton is. So again, that's another key matchup that we have to get right this weekend. It's hard to know whether they'll track him with either Ben Creeley or Stephen Sheridan, but definitely one of them is going to need to be detailed, that they're going to have to sacrifice their own game in terms of getting involved in open play to try and nullify him, and just try and make sure that there's always a bit of pressure on him, because he's so dangerous with his pass and his second player where he'll come off a shoulder of an inside forward.
Aaron, I'm intrigued. I mean, I suppose we saw it cross-channel firstly in soccer, but in the GAA right now, a long term for a manager is nearly gone, isn't it? But McGeeney's in year 8. I'm also intrigued that Kieran Donahue is part of the backroom team now, and in Galway, in our hurling setup in Micheál Donahue's last year, Kieran Donahue played a role in that management team. How important is it that McGeeney has been given the time, number one? Number two, Donahue's influence. I'm looking at guys like, say, Soupy Campbell, Rory McGrugan, quality players who seem to have been a little bit reignited, haven't they, this year?
They have, and you're right, Sean. I think that's the biggest feedback that you get from Kieran is his one-to-one dealings with players, getting them to fulfil their potential, pointing out their strengths, working on their weaknesses. And I suppose if you go back to the first Donegal game, you wouldn't see where we are now. But I just felt at that stage that tactically we got caught in no man's land again. And unfortunately, throughout Kieran's tenure, while there has been so much that has been done right at different stages, we just always seem to fall short whenever it mattered most in the early rounds of the Ulster Championship. Haven't got a run in it at all. Haven't been in a provincial final since 2008, let alone win one. So that was the big disappointment this year, where we felt that this was our year to try and make up. We've established ourselves as a Division 1 team again, but we needed to get back winning Ulster Championships, and it was deflating in Ballybofey. There's no point in painting it any other way. But I think the big thing from the team now is that they just seem like they've parked this, let's think outside the box, let's try to be tactically one step ahead. And we've just gone back to basics, which is hunt your man down, win your own individual battle. And we are playing a style that suits the players we have. Like Galway, we have good forwards. So what do you do with good forwards? Well, you give them the ball as quick and as early as you possibly can, and stop wasting time in terms of trying to copy and mirror other teams. Whether it's by accident, whether we stumble upon it, I don't know. But that's why I feel it's working for us. We're playing in terms of, it's probably a good mix of old-fashioned traditional football with your modern blend in terms of kickouts, and obviously Ethan Rafferty, what he's able to do in terms of coming out as a sweeper keeper. We have a good blend there at the moment. But so do Galway. I think the biggest thing is you learn huge amounts whenever you lose. And I think while it might have been annoying on that day, I think losing the league final to Roscommon's the best thing that's happened to this Galway team, because I think you learned a huge amount defensively in terms of your setup, and right, it cost you a Division 2 league title, but I think you'll take that. I definitely think that day has really, really stood to Galway, and I think what I've seen to date in the Mayo and the Roscommon game has been a huge improvement in how individually you're defending, but as a collective also. So I think that day will prove to be very beneficial for you.
Final point, Aaron, before we let you go. I mean, does history have any bearing on this fixture? Because we're clinging on to the stat that
we'd like the 100% to continue.
Galway and Armagh have played 3 times in the championship. Armagh have never won. 3 wins for Galway, including McGeeney's first year in 2015 when Damien Comer got the only goal. Is there anybody there with a kind of an idea that, you know, we need to win this one because we've never beaten Galway, and it's nice just to get that box ticked?
Or is that any significance at all? Really?
Correct.
Yeah.
If I'm putting a player's hat on it, no, that's of no significance to me whatsoever. It's an All-Ireland quarter-final. It's a packed Croke Park, and it's an opportunity to perform and progress to an All-Ireland semi-final. So it wouldn't be in my thinking at all. Obviously, our bloodlines, half my family were battling slow people. So I'd say is to be kind to us at this stage, and maybe just let us get one on the board. But no, genuinely, I do think it is realistically an absolute 50-50. And again, I'm not trying to be cute with the whole thing. We absolutely need to hit the same form that we have done this past 2 weeks, because anything short of that, it's just simply not going to be good enough, because we haven't proven ourselves enough at championship football to be able to go out and play badly and win at this stage. So it has to be the same again for us. But I do genuinely believe if we hit that form, that we have the attacking threat up front that can cause enough trouble to put the scores that's going to be needed, because Croke Park now, wide open spaces against a team who, to a certain degree, let us play football. I actually think we're back to the stage now where it's over 20 points is going to be needed to win this game, because this is a statement game for both counties. I know they can only focus on what's happening now, but I just think the momentum that could come out of a win in an absolute potential for a classic, I don't think you could quantify what it's going to mean to the victors this weekend. So I'll just hope that we can do enough to sneak over the line, and you can worry about the hurling.
Aaron, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to chat to you.
Aaron Kernan chatting there, the former Armagh player. Yeah, I mean, you can only imagine that Armagh have to be excited as well with the prospects of
I think there's a bit more excitement up there than there is here, in fairness.
And getting their teeth into Derry. I mean, we're probably not looking, but there's this idea as well about 98 and the romance of Derry in a semi-final. Yes. And we're forgetting all about Clare. So let's bring in Colm Keyes from the Irish Independent. Colm, thanks a million for joining us on the Over the Line podcast. Before we bring you in, we just have to mention, of course, your colleague Tom O'Riordan, whose funeral you're coming from. A sad loss to the journalist industry and indeed to the Irish world of sport.
Very, very much so, Ollie. Tom was, I actually joined the Independent after Tom. Tom retired from the Independent in 2002. He had been athletics correspondent, but was also very prominent in Gaelic games. And he was a very, very enthusiastic journalist, really, really was. And for many years afterwards, he freelanced. He was one of the most prominent freelancers around. So he was very active. Obviously, tremendous runner, ran in the Olympics in 1964, covered athletics extensively, as does his son Ian now for the Irish Times. Like Tom, he doubles up as a GAA journalist, but primarily athletics. And their great love of athletics always shone through. But also, in Tom's case, Gaelic football, and he was a devout Kerry fan. As I said, very enthusiastic. If he saw Galway or Mayo or somebody like that make a move in a Connacht League match in January, he'd automatically say, I think I've seen the All-Ireland champions. You know, he was very, very... he was very positive all the time in what he saw and how he delivered it. So a good colleague and a great man.
Nice words, Colm. You mentioned Kerry. We were focusing on Galway Armagh for the last 15 minutes with Aaron Kernan, and he genuinely calls it a 50-50 match. But surely Kerry are heavy odds on against Mayo. Or is there something surprising that could happen again with Mayo next Sunday?
Well, I think the surprising thing will happen if David Clifford doesn't take the field, because if you were to believe some of the speculation, his calf injury is a lot more serious than what it initially seemed to me. Now, I have to say and qualify, I actually don't know, but I've heard the rumours and the stories, and these things can take legs, so you'd always have to take them with a grain of salt. But Jack O'Connor did say he should play, and there's no reason to doubt that he won't. But unless there's something in that, because really what David Clifford did to Mayo in the league final, they left him 1-1 by and large with Pádraig O'Hora, and obviously it's no way to play David Clifford, as it showed in the Cork game when Sean Powter tucked in a sweeper beside Kevin Flahav as his outrider, so to speak, and they did manage to curtail him. David Clifford only scored a point from play, and he was much less influential, albeit Paddy Clifford and Stephen O'Brien were able to make hay in that instance. So by concentrating so much on David Clifford, you are leaving gaps and spaces elsewhere that Kerry do have an abundance of forwards that can exploit that. But anyway, that's the question. Will David Clifford play? All the indications are he will have some involvement. To what extent? I'm not sure, but it's certainly out there around Kerry that he is in some way a doubt. But Jack O'Connor on Monday confirmed that he, to use the word, should be okay.
Is Galway Armagh a 50-50 game like Aaron Kernan was suggesting, or have you an inclination towards either side?
No, I don't. And the question of extra time and penalties and winner on the day, Ollie, looms large for this one, because it's impossible really to spot a form line in this that would suggest, if you consider Donegal or Armagh's last 4 games, 3 of them have been against Donegal, the end of the league, the championship and the qualifier, and in between they drew Tyrone. Now if you look at what Tyrone if you look at Tyrone and where they were this year, and I was speaking to Niall Morgan earlier, he just said we didn't prepare hard enough, we weren't fit enough, and teams ran us off the ground, and that was a factor in their defeat, no doubt about it. They were nowhere near as prepared this year. And there was a spell in the Armagh game against Donegal where I thought Donegal were getting the upper hand until the calamity of the kickouts and the concession of a penalty and the black card for Sean Patton in that game. And that really turned that. But up to that calamity, I felt Donegal were exerting a fair degree of control in that game. So Armagh just maybe, obviously a lot of people think Armagh will win this game. I think they're just slightly overrated, ever so slightly. Very well organised, obviously, in defence. And they have some inside forwards, Jason Duffy, who can really turn a game. And obviously Stephen Campbell and Rian O'Neill, who really is a very, very special talent. But from what I saw of Galway against Roscommon and indeed Mayo, they are much changed, a much more organised team this year for sure. And I feel that Shane Walsh and Damien Comer are really back to where they were fitness-wise, free of injury. Obviously Shane had his problems during the league, but he's got beyond that now. And I think they will really relish playing in Croke Park just as much as Armagh will. So 2 teams coming with big momentum, albeit Armagh's is only 2 weeks old. Galway had the momentum of through the Connacht Championship. There's a lot to like about Galway. They've made a lot of improvements. I think their half-back line, very attack-conscious. John Daly, Dylan McHugh and Killian McDade really carried the ball impressively against Galway. I thought they got a lot of thrust and energy off that particular line. And in Croke Park, you'd expect that they will push on even more. I think we'll see a high-scoring game. Won't be surprised if it goes to extra time. But I do think Walsh and Comer can be the critical factors here. That will be very, very difficult for Armagh to hold. I would imagine Aidan Forker will pick up Comer, having done a job on Michael Murphy. But I think Comer offers even more dynamism in the way he has played this year so far. And he will trouble the Armagh defence considerably more than I think Murphy will, because Murphy looked a tired figure against Armagh, I felt, the last day, where there's a bit more vitality just about the Galway team at the moment.
Colm, and I hope the fact that you're on Zoom will constitute that when we head to the CCC that this will be a properly constituted podcast. Deviating to that point, which we have to, Colm, after the last week, God, where is the GAA disciplinary procedures now? It was farcical. And I know, look, at Galway benefited, obviously Clare benefited, but where is it going?
Well, first of all, I know that came out on the night of the meeting and the day after, that you could not have a meeting on Zoom or video conferencing, but actually you can, and it's accounted for in rules. So that wasn't the issue. The issue was that part of the initial meeting, let's say the notice of disciplinary action, was conducted by email, which is obviously different than video call, where everybody's not looking across from each other. They move off screen, shall we say. And apparently one of the CCC members could not view the clips, or whether it was Keenan Fahy or the Clare duo, could not view the clips that were sent around properly. So they were sent online, and there was a follow-up to say, is everybody okay? Are we okay to proceed with this, having viewed the clips? And they all responded by email that yes, that's okay. That's the way they have done business for years on discipline and every other manner of agreement on something, how they sign off on. There is nothing in rule, Sean, that allows for it, but there's also nothing in rule that doesn't allow for it. And actually, the Rules Advisory Committee of the GAA they had actually prepared a document before that clarified that you can actually do business, whether disciplinary or otherwise, by email like this. and that was circulated to Central Council on Monday evening. And since then, they obviously approved it with a considerable majority that, yes, this is an okay way to do business. So consequently, if this had been known, or certainly if this had been validated beforehand, Keenan Fahy wouldn't have, well, I won't say he wouldn't have got off. Maybe they would have listened to the substantive argument, and I'm pretty sure he was going to say, well, it wasn't really a stamp what they accused him of, or charged him of, I should say. Maybe he would have got a hearing that would have been that would have agreed with that point of view. But on the actual technicality that they got off, I think that would have been closed off, and he would have been facing a much more difficult task. But he got off. A hearings committee decided that. I think if it was to happen again, it wouldn't happen, because it's quite clearly clarified now and validated that you can do business like this in terms of an investigation, that you can conduct part of it by email. So that would have been cleared up.
I think the bigger question here, though, is something you addressed in the Irish Independent during the week, of just the general idea in the GAA that you don't accept these decisions, and whatever loophole you can look for, whether it's signed in Irish or not, that it's been an age-old thing in the GAA. Whatever we do, let's go through the rule book and try and get them off.
That's it. And, I'm pretty sure that if a club in Galway brought it to Galway County Board, the same thing happens at drop down at every level. That is just the culture, that the same rules that apply for clubs in Galway have to abide by them at a wider level too. So it is a real cultural issue that, and I think even more so now, having seen so many players get proposed suspensions overturned on the basis of technicalities, I think there'll be an even greater rush to get players off, and it will be an expectation around it. So it's not a great situation for the GAA to be in. Everybody signs up to the same rules. Once you become a member of the association, you sign up to the same rules. And really, at what point should discipline really matter to people in a broader sense, not just their own self-interest? Obviously, everybody wants to get off, everybody wants to play, and officials see it as a duty to give that player every chance, no matter at what level it is, whether it's club or county. But everybody signs up to the rules of the association, but not everybody is happy to abide by them in that regard. So it is a cultural issue for the GAA, not just last week, but on a broader level, on a much broader level. It certainly is, that there's very, very little acceptance of penalties for indiscipline.
And I suppose, Colm, coming out of that, then we saw the incident and we'll say it parochial again, the Galway Cork game, where Darragh Burke's shoulder. There was a lot of noise, particularly on social media, wasn't there, Ollie, that something should have been done retrospectively for that, but as it transpires, nothing has been. No,
nothing can be, because the referee clearly saw that. He allowed play on, and I don't think, and the referee, if there was to be a charge for that, which I don't think there would be, I think it was marginal. I felt probably just a little bit high and a little bit over the top. I wouldn't say it was as to the same degree as John Small and Owen McLaughlin last year. I don't think it was in that territory, but certainly there is a concern in the GAA, while shoulder to shoulder is permitted. There is a concern that the ferocity that some of these players can really generate in their challenges, there is a concern around that. But all told, the referee saw that. He saw it as a fair challenge, and for that to be revisited, he would have had to reverse that decision, which he wasn't going to do. And I think probably there's a sense in hurling that because the game is so frantic, because it moves so fast, that there's probably a little bit more give in hurling in that situation than there would be in football. But to go back to the point, the referee did see that. He adjudicated it there and then, and that's not one I don't think that he's going to look back on. Certainly it was a very, very, very solid hit, and that's Darragh Burke. He brings that to his game, and if he times a challenge like that, whoever's coming into him is going to feel it.
Let's have a look at that clip, shall we?
Think I didn't take risks to get to this.
Split second timing. It's very much a case of where the point of contact is.
And often And, you know, particularly in radio, Colm, for us, we don't have the benefit of replays very often in most of the games that we do. And I think even Micheál Donahue, who was with us on Saturday, you nearly go with your gut reaction first. But the one thing I look for is kind of player reaction. And even Harnedy, you know, didn't react, went to the ground, got up pretty quickly. There wasn't that much kind of colour around it. So, I think the bigger issue as well, isn't it, that the Sunday game, I suppose, was then seen as the kind of executioner almost of the few incidents. Do you then have to go down the road of nearly taking every game forensically and going through every single incident, which has opened up another whole can of worms, isn't it, really?
The other side of the argument I'd make is, Colm, the potential now that the Sunday game will start watering down their coverage, because I'm sure there was legal letters flying left, right and centre about the implications of what they are doing. So I think you might find the coverage in the next few weeks will be rather bland, and they won't be going after a lot of these incidents.
Well, I thought there was a reluctance almost on the night of those incidents were shown. None of the panellists, to the best of my knowledge, were actually calling for suspensions. Okay, they highlighted them, but the Sunday game is hours after the game before anybody else has a chance to address this. They have the rights to highlights and the coverage on the night of the game. Of course they're going to show controversial incidents like that. And can anyone really say what happened didn't happen? Okay, there's context to it, and there's a questions over intent and all of that. But everybody can see what's happened. And with regard to the issue, well, if you're going to highlight some issues, then CCCC should look at everything. Well, I'd imagine they do look at quite a bit. Obviously, manpower to look at every game from every camera angle. And you must remember, certainly in Croke Park on a big game, there could be up to 14 cameras on different angles. You could be pouring through all of them, looking for incidents. Just the sheer manpower of this. It's like speed cameras. You're only going to have them on the busiest roads, and whatever you catch, you catch. It's just the way it is. It's hard to be. It'd just be too difficult to apply it consistently across the board. But that doesn't say that what's in front of you and what's seen and what's out there shouldn't be dealt with, because that would send a far worse message across the board, that unless you're caught there and then, as it happened, then you're okay with it. You have to. No sports body can operate like that they cannot retrospectively look back at incidents of indiscipline and deal with them, because it really would send out the wrong message right across the board, and that would be dropping down to club level too. I can think of quite a few incidents actually that weren't highlighted on programmes at night, whether it be League Sunday or the Sunday game, and they were pursued afterwards. Rian O'Neill being one, the Armagh player, he had a proposed suspension after an altercation at the end of the Donegal League match in March that wasn't picked up on specifically. Okay, there was an incident, but that particular incident wasn't highlighted. He had a proposed ban. As it happened, he got off on a technicality too. So I think there's a duty there for administrators to pursue by whatever means they have, whatever tools they have available to them, because someone has to at least try to uphold discipline. And if it happens to be a Sunday game clip or something that's reported and then reviewed in that way, then that should be okay. Okay, you'd like it to be broadened out as much as possible. But if you were to pour over every camera angle, it could be the following week by the time you'd lay a charge, and really that's too late. So there is a time frame here too, that they really only have a couple of days to operate, and in that time they do what they can and they move on.
Colm, listen, it's been great chatting to you. We'll be back again, I'm sure, in a few weeks' time, but safe travelling, and I'm sure there'll be no issue for the Dubs at the weekend.
I wouldn't imagine so. I wouldn't imagine so. Okay, Ollie. Thanks, Sean. Thank you.
Colm Keyes from the Irish Independent
chatting
to us
Thanks,
there.
Bye-bye.
I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me that the 4 provincial winners should win. Is there going to be a slip-up amongst one of them? And if there is, are Galway clearly the most vulnerable?
There could be, but the other thing is that we say you take Clare coming, there's a bit of momentum coming through the qualifiers no matter what. I mean, Roscommon, and look at Roscommon where they are now, you know, well, probably the morning of the kind of final, you would say had a decent chance of winning the Connacht Championship.
And if it was Roscommon against Derry, it'd be a far closer affair, one would have thought, in prediction terms, than the fact that it's Clare against Derry, and everyone is figuring, oh, this is bonus territory for Clare, but it should be Galway Derry, in our opinion, and it should be Kerry Dublin, but who knows?
There's another factor here as well, there's Croke Park, that Galway still have, I know the record in Croke Park isn't as good as we'd like it to be, but Armagh haven't played in Croke Park for a while in a pressure game. Derry haven't, like Clare did by beating Roscommon. So that's another factor as well. I still, from what Aaron said earlier on, I think there's huge excitement in Armagh. There's expectancy, and that is hard enough to calm no matter how you look at it. So look at hopefully.
We talk about Galway Derry in the seniors. Yeah. That's only a maybe. What's a definite is Galway Derry in the minors. Yeah. And that's our live game on Saturday at 1 o'clock. We had an unbelievable minor hurling All-Ireland semi-final with Galway and Tipperary last weekend. Let's hope for something similar with the football at 1 o'clock in Parnell Park, which might seem a strange fixture, but with Derry playing later on that day in Croke Park, I think that was the idea about bringing the Derry fans a good portion of the way towards Croke Park into Dublin before they move on. Next week we're going to be chatting about the hurling, Galway Limerick. We see Cian Lynch is back training. Garroge Mac, a big doubt for Galway.
Yeah, by all accounts. So hopefully we'll know more next week, but that could be a pivotal one in, one out.
Yeah, and of course, as the things are, even as they are, Galway would be heavy underdogs going into that fixture. Clare, Kilkenny and the others. So it will be all about All-Ireland semi-finals next week. But for now, from Sean and myself, thanks for watching. Overline it.
Over the Line Extra, your weekly Galway GAA podcast with Ollie Turner and Shane Walsh.